I tried to save my brother. True story. A little backstory. I was born on October 31st, 1983. I do not know how much of this is true, but from what I was told, a tornado hit the hospital the moment I was born. It destroyed everything except the NICU and maternity ward. Fast forward a year and a half, I had not started really talking yet, and my mom was getting ready for work. I was sitting on the floor playing with my G.I. Joe action figures. As she passes by me, I said, "Mama, do not go." She stopped dead in her tracks. I have not even said my first word yet. And I just spoke a complete sentence. She looked at me and asked, "What did you say?" Clearly stunned by the situation, I answered her again, "Mama, do not go." With that, she called into work sick. A half hour later, a breaking news report came on the TV. On the highway she would have been driving on, at the same time she would have been driving on it, there was a 13-car pileup. My mom would have died. She told me I saved her life that day. Now after that, my mom went on a downward spiral. She started doing heavy drugs. One night as she was doing them, I came up out of nowhere and bit her on her arm. She flung me across the room, the back of my head hitting the brick fireplace. She realized what she had done and called the ambulance and the police. She turned herself in, and they put her in a psych ward. I was placed with my grandmother. My father was not in the picture at the time. My mom and him had been separated since I was 10 months old. He had went into a drunken, drug-induced rage, and because I had been crying, had tried to suffocate me in my crib. My mom fought him off, snatched me up, and took off to her mother's. My grandmother, who I was left with when she was committed, when the family had come back to the house to get our belongings, he was long gone. Now I had just turned 2 while living with my grandmother, with my mother in the hospital, when my dad showed up to her house with a new woman on his arm wanting to see me. My grandmother allowed it. She stepped out of the room for a minute to get something. When she returned, my dad, the woman, and I were gone. Now this was long before they had the Amber Alert, so my mother's side of the family would not see me for 12 years. I was on the back of milk cartons, and my aunt had hired a private detective to try to find me, but that's a story for another time. Anyway, fast forward to my 8th birthday. I had come to love the woman who had been on my dad's arm that day, and called her mom. She protected me from my father on many occasions when he was in a drunken rage. She had a son named Danny, and I had grown very attached to him. I had come to think of him as more than just a brother. He was like a second father to me. He taught me everything that a father was supposed to teach a daughter. Now I loved him very much, and still to this day I miss him. Needless to say, my attachment and connection to him was very strong, so on the night of my 8th birthday, I had a horrible dream. I was out of my body watching him as he was working on a computer. He heard a noise outside and went to inspect it. Someone was messing with his Harley-Davidson motorcycle. The man noticed my brother, snatched my brother's helmet off his bike and took off down the street. My brother hopped on his motorcycle and took off after him. At the red light down the street, he tried to stop and he could not. His brakes had been cut, so he swerved, hit the curb, flew 16 feet in the air. When he landed, his neck landed on the curb. He died instantly. I woke up screaming and crying. My stepmom ran in and asked me what was wrong. I told her about the dream. She told me that it was just that, a dream. Unfortunately, I had that dream once a week until the month before it happened. I had even told my brother about it. He had laughed it off and told me not to worry, that he was not going anywhere. The look in his eyes told me something different though. He had believed me. The day came when I had been in school and I was pulled out of class. My dad drove us to the hospital. Once there, the doctor came in and told us there was nothing they could do. Danny was gone. It had happened exactly as my dream had foretold. I have never forgotten that experience. It still haunts me to this day. I still have premonitions and do what I can to help people who they directly affect. Whether they listen or not is their decision. A word of advice though. If a child comes to you with a reoccurring nightmare, please listen to them. It may just save your life. Thank you for reading this. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button to support my work. And as always, enjoy the fear, my dear.